Your initial reaction to the Brian Flores lawsuit was what?
I have not read the lawsuit yet. It's 58 pages. I want to read the whole thing. My initial reaction was frustration. And Brian Flores is saying, I believe, he is saying what a lot of people are talking about casually in conversation. He just brought it. He's frustrated with the system right now. And I'm going to have a lot more to say on this next week. But I think right now the NFL has a problem because you've got African-American employees, especially coaches, who are frustrated with the system right now.
If Brian Flores had called you before filing that lawsuit, what would you have told him?
Probably make sure you know what you're doing, and this is what you want to do, and this is how you want to bring it to life. It's interesting, John, you mentioned 2002. Johnny Cochran and Cyrus Murray had a meeting with the NFL, and they said, hey, we've got some issues here. We've got African-American coaches being fired with winning records, being fired in the playoffs. We've got limited access to African-American coaches getting into the system. These guys are upset. This was 20 years ago. And he said, we need to sit down at the table and you need to listen to them because the next step is going to be litigation. And I remember Johnny Cochran saying this very, very loudly. NFL, you do not want litigation. And the Fritz Pollard Alliance came into effect. We had some things going. The Rooney Rule gets put in place, diversity committees, those type of things. So I think Johnny Cochran kind of predicted that this might happen one day.
Chris Carter was on Good Morning Football and NFL Network today, and he said he was asked about what do we do? How do we make this better? And I'm paraphrasing, but it was let's groom these coaches, these assistant coaches, these minority coaches on what to expect in the interviews, prepare them better. And I don't know if you can just sort of wave a wand like that and go, we're going to prepare Eric Bieniemy to be a head coach. I don't know if you can do that, but I was interested with what Chris Carter had to say.
I can appreciate that. My personal opinion is the problem is not on the supply side. The problem is on the demand side. And there's one, and I have one. I'm going to be on a soapbox about this until they change it. I think the process is flawed for everybody. And that's why we have a lot of bad decisions made and we have a lot of 1 year, 2 year hires. And it really hurts minority candidates. And I'll tell you why. We are interviewing these coaches during the playoffs. And I think that's terribly wrong. It's terribly unfair. You cannot tell me that I can prepare to play the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm trying to stop them as a defensive coordinator, and then I can take a timeout on Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock and interview with you, Dan, and you're asking me questions about your organization and your team, and you want me to be specific about how I'm going to make your team better. And then after that interview, go back to my thoughts on the Chiefs. And no one can be as prepared in that situation as the person who's not in the playoffs. I was in the playoffs in Minnesota 3 years, interviewed a couple of times, didn't get the jobs. The 1 year we didn't make it, I had 3 interviews with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I was able to be very specific about what I wanted to do. I ended up getting that job. I don't think it was a coincidence. When people say, so-and-so came in and blew me away in the interview. Well, I could blow you away too if I had a week to look at your roster and look at your past drafts and look at how I would do it and set things up and make a PowerPoint presentation. And now you're Eric Bieniemy and these African-American coaches, who's getting the interviews? You tell me. Eric Bieniemy, Leslie Frazier, Byron Leftwich, Todd Bowles. These aren't coaches who aren't in the playoffs, because if you're African-American and you're not in the playoffs, you're probably not getting an interview.
Have you talked to the commissioner? Have you conveyed this to the commissioner?
I've said this for 5 years. Yeah. I think this is wrong. I think interviewing coaches in the middle of the playoffs, it's detrimental to them and it's detrimental to the team, because you don't get a good impression of someone that can't be prepared as someone who has had a week and a half to do nothing but prepare for your interview.
Yeah, I can't. Everybody keeps saying Eric Bieniemy deserves a job. I'm all for that. It feels like we're missing something here, Tony. Why does Eric Bieniemy not have a head coaching job? I know he's reportedly going to interview with the Saints. I thought he was going to get the Vikings job. So this year 3 of Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a head coaching job? Why is that?
I don't know why, but all I can do is go back to my situation. And I heard a lot of the same things in the 90s. Well, Tony Dungy's very smart. He's a good coach. He's been in some good systems. He's worked for Chuck Noll. He's worked for Marty Schottenheimer. He's worked for Denny Green. But his personality, he doesn't come across well in the interviews. He's not a overly aggressive guy. He's not this. He's not that. He doesn't interview well.
Oh.
That's what I heard about myself 30 years ago or 25 years ago. And I don't know. It's that I wasn't exactly what people were looking for. I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed with an organization, thought it was going really well. The last question the guy asked me, he said, I understand you don't use profanity. You don't raise your voice much. How are you going to motivate my guys? And I said, I'll do it the way I always have and the way my dad did it with me. I'm going to show them that I care about them, that I know what I'm doing, that I love them. And I think I'll get that mutual respect and they'll be motivated. That's what I've done with my defenses over the years. Guy looked across at me, Dan said, that won't work in the NFL. That's not what I'm looking for. Well, and then the word came out that I didn't interview well. The next year, I go to Tampa. They asked me kind of the similar question. I answered the same way. Mr. Glazer said, that's how I talk to my boys. That's who I want as my head coach. So I think that's what Eric Bieniemy needs, somebody that just says you are the kind of guy I'm looking for.
Did you send a picture of your Super Bowl ring to that guy who said that your style won't work in the NFL?
We actually played against them quite often in the upcoming years, and he actually told me at an owners meeting, I was wrong.
Oh. What was his name again, Tony?
I can't go into that. I don't want to throw anybody under the bus.
Yeah.